Have you ever heard a voice that felt like it belonged to you? A voice that tucked itself into your life so seamlessly that you forgot it was coming from a stranger you had never met. For thousands of people in Blackwood, that voice was Vincent Hale until he was found dead. They called it Midnight Confessions, a cheap little show with a late-night host who had an odd talent. He could make strangers tell the parts of themselves they'd spent a lifetime hiding. People called him when they were lonely, scared, drunk, desperate. They called when they wanted to unload something they'd never say to a living face. A confession on air sounds harmless, but not on the night of November 12th. I'm Cassandra Maddox, and this is the case of the radio host who knew too much. On his final night, Vincent's voice went silent. His broadcast cut off mid-sentence. The next morning, police found him in the station's sound booth, slumped over his microphone, murdered. Now here's the strange part. In the weeks leading up to his death, Vincent had been hinting that someone was watching him, that he was afraid of what he called his shadow audience. When I arrived at the station, police had already cleared the booth. But even without the body, the scene was loud with questions. Vincent's notes were scattered across the desk, a half-finished script sitting right where he left it. The microphone still pointed at his chair, as if waiting for him to return. But one thing was wrong. His final broadcast was missing. Every show was automatically recorded and archived. Yet the file from November 12th, the night he died, had been deleted. I pressed the technician on duty, and he swore he hadn't touched it. Maybe he was telling the truth. But if Vincent's death was tied to something he said on air, someone had made sure that recording would never be heard again. That was my first lead, and my first question. What did Vincent Hale say in those final moments, right before he was silenced? So I started with the people Vincent left behind. Everyone had a version of him, and none of them matched. The first person I needed to talk to was Lydia Cross, Vincent's producer. She'd been with him from the start, screening the calls, lining up the segments, making sure Midnight Confessions ran smoothly. If anyone knew what was going on behind the mic, it was her. But Lydia wasn't interested in helping me. When I asked about the missing recording, she shut down fast and said it must have been a glitch. When I pressed, she snapped and said that Vincent invited this. Before I could press further, she ended the interview and walked away. But her words stuck with me. Whatever had happened that night, Lydia believed Vincent brought it on himself. The next person was his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Dana Rowe. She and Vincent had dated for nearly 2 years, back when Midnight Confessions was still building its audience. She helped him brainstorm segments, even sat in on a few broadcasts when they were short on callers. For a while, she was more than a girlfriend. She was part of the show. But when I met her, there was no nostalgia in her tone, only bitterness. She said, he used people. Every story, every confession, it was all fuel for his act. And if you were close to him, that was just more material. I asked her about their breakup. She laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. She said he ended it on air. He didn't say her name, but she knew it was her. He said that some relationships just rot if you leave them in the dark long enough. That was his goodbye. After that, he stopped answering his phone. Dana swore she hadn't seen him in months, but her hands tightened around her glass when I mentioned the night he died. She had motive, and the kind of wound that doesn't heal quietly. Then, there was the caller who showed up on the logs night after night. No name, just a number that traced back to a prepaid phone. From the recordings, I could tell it was always the same voice. Calm, low, almost rehearsed. He never gave details about himself. Instead, he would ask Vincent to keep talking, sometimes for hours. When I replayed one of the calls, I caught something chilling. The fan whispered, "Don't stop. If you stop, you'll regret it." The police had dismissed it as just another prank, but to me, it sounded like a threat. And the last time that number dialed in was November 12th, the night Vincent was killed. By the end of that week, I had 3 leads: a lover humiliated on air, a fan who wouldn't let go, and a producer with a grudge. Each had motive, each had secrets, but motive alone doesn't prove guilt. I needed more. So I went back to the source, his show. Hours of old recordings stacked on drives the police had barely touched. Most callers were harmless, drunks with bad breakups, lonely people rambling into the night. But then there were the confessions, the kind that made you sit up and wonder if the person on the other end realized they were speaking to thousands of strangers. One in particular stayed with me, a woman's voice. She admitted to embezzling money from the small-town bank where she worked. Not pocket change, hundreds of thousands over the years. She even laughed as she told Vincent how easy it had been. Vincent pushed her gently, in that way he did, and finally she said, "If they ever find out, it won't be the cops I'm afraid of. It'll be my husband. He doesn't forgive betrayal." The line went silent for a moment. Then Vincent said, "Well, now you've confessed, and you can't take it back." Another call came from a man, his voice shaking so badly it was almost hard to make out his words. He confessed to being responsible for a hit and run years ago, an accident that killed a local teenager. He hadn't stopped, hadn't reported it. He said he still saw the boy's face in his sleep. Vincent kept him talking, dragging out every detail: the car model, the time of night, the road he'd taken. The man was sobbing by the time the call ended. Now this next confession. Even I was stunned. It was from a woman named Melissa. This is what she said.
"I was married to this man for 11 years. 11. And let me tell you, those years felt less like a marriage and more like a prison sentence. He was the perfect husband in public. Smiles, hand-holding, the whole storybook couple charade. But behind closed doors, he was controlling, manipulative, gaslighting me until I didn't trust my own shadow. He criticized everything: how I folded towels, how I cooked, even how I dressed. He kept a secret bank account I wasn't allowed to touch and made me quit my job so I'd depend on him. Every time I caught him texting someone suspicious, he'd accidentally break his phone. And the lies, God, the lies. Late nights at the office, endless business trips. I thought he was cheating with some woman from work, but no, he wasn't cheating with women. He was living an entirely different life. He had another family, another wife, another set of kids, the whole time. I found out because of a stupid Facebook message. Some woman I didn't even know, she sends me a picture of my husband at a birthday party for apparently his daughter. He wasn't in Chicago for a conference like he told me. He was there, blowing out candles with a child I'd never seen before, his child. And suddenly, all those late nights, all those work trips, they weren't business. They were his other life, his other family. And every excuse he ever gave me was just another script he was recycling between us. Do you know how insane it feels to realize your whole marriage was just a copy-paste job? The worst part? My kids have half-siblings they never knew existed. He stole more than my marriage. He stole their truth. I divorced him the second I had proof, but every time I see his face now, all I see is the monster who made me feel insane while he was lying to 2 families.
What a twisted confession. But the deeper I dug, the more tangled Vincent's world became. The ex-lover with her public collapse, the obsessed fan who blurred admiration into obsession, the ex-wife who had detonated her marriage on air. Any one of them could have snapped. But then the case twisted. First, I learned about the station's ratings battle. Midnight Confessions wasn't just late-night filler. It was the station's most streamed program, and Vincent had recently been offered a solo syndication deal, That would have made him bigger than the station and left his colleagues behind. The jealous producer suddenly had more reason than bruised ego. She was staring down the loss of her livelihood. Second, there was the missing tape. Vincent's final broadcast, the one cut off mid-sentence, should have been archived automatically. But the file was gone, erased. Someone didn't just kill Vincent. They scrubbed the record of what happened that night. And then came the most chilling lead, the shadow audience Vincent hinted at before his death. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but as I spoke to colleagues, one detail kept resurfacing. Vincent would glance at the studio window during calls, whisper about someone standing there. He'd pause mid-call and stare at the studio window. He'd step outside after shows to smoke for 10 minutes and return shaken, and he'd delete texts in front of people. When I asked for security footage, I expected a dead end. Small stations often have gaps, but this had patterns. The cameras that covered the studio hallway had a 5-minute blackout the night Vincent died, and the logs showed a maintenance account pinging the system 5 minutes before the blackout. The maintenance account was registered to a contractor who had been in and out of the building for months, legitimately, doing wiring and updates. He denied being inside that night. His van's GPS showed it in town, but the timestamps had quirks, pings clustered around odd hours, then gaps. Someone with technical knowledge could have used that access to sneak in, or at least to spoof an access trail. More unnerving were a string of anonymous emails Vincent had received in the week before his death. Short, clipped messages with no sender, each containing a single link to an old show and one line: "Remember." He didn't share them with anyone. Whoever sent them knew which broadcasts would get under his skin. As I mapped the people who had motive, a pattern emerged, not of a single enemy, but of leverage. Vincent's show had thrown up a scattershot of secrets that hit people in different ways. Financial ruin for one, public humiliation for another, guilt that never fades for a third. The person who killed him might not have been the one most directly harmed by a confession, or possibly already had been. Two things stood out as particularly damning. The missing tape, erased in a way that suggested intent. Whoever removed it knew its value. The maintenance blackout, a 5-minute window where normal surveillance stopped and silence reigned. Those two small facts made the case feel less like a personal vendetta and more like a calculated erasure. I started to suspect that Vincent's death wasn't the impulsive act of a scorned lover or a crazy fan. Someone with resources, technical access, and motive beyond simple anger. I had to find out who would know something about the missing tapes and blackout. Evan Ward wasn't station staff. He was the contractor everyone trusted, quiet, precise, the guy who handled wiring, servers, and security without anyone noticing. When I met him at a diner on the edge of Blackwood, I could see the tension in his shoulders. I laid out the facts for him. His account pinged the system 5 minutes before the cameras went dark the night Vincent died. His van was in town. The timeline matched the perfect window to move through the building, erase files, and leave no trace. He admitted he hadn't been in the studio, that the access could have been spoofed. He explained that the unusual logins after he'd left were impossible to ignore. Someone with knowledge had used his credentials to move freely, and he hadn't known until too late. He told me how loyal he had been to Vincent, how he had double-checked the archive that night, because Vincent trusted him. The backups, he said, would have been the only record if anything happened. Then Evan lowered his voice and admitted what chilled me. Someone had been using his account after hours, long after he left. He had tried to trace it, but whoever it was, they knew exactly what they were doing. He hadn't seen anyone else in the station that night. but he realized someone could have planted themselves, learned the routines, and slipped in without being noticed. Someone careful, patient, and calculating. As I left the diner, the pieces clicked in my mind. Evan wasn't guilty. He had been an unwitting pawn. The missing tape, the blackout, the tampered logs. Someone else had orchestrated it all, and that someone was still out there, watching, waiting, manipulating. Back at the station, I pored over the system logs again, line by line. Evan's account showed activity at odd hours, timestamps that didn't match his work, gaps that couldn't be explained by normal maintenance. I noticed subtle patterns. The access times coincided with moments Vincent had mentioned feeling watched, the same nights he hinted at his shadow audience. Going through the server logs again, I saw a name kept popping up. Not Evan's, not any staff members. A name I didn't recognize at first. It appeared at the exact moments the system was accessed during the studio blackout. Whoever was using Evan's credentials left a digital breadcrumb. V. Caldwell. I didn't know who V. Caldwell was yet, but the logs had given me the first real lead, a thread I could start to pull, and the beginning of a trail that could lead me to the person behind the murder. I started digging. Social media, public records, old broadcast notes. That's when I found her, Vicky Caldwell. She wasn't station staff. She wasn't a frequent caller, but she was tied to someone Vincent had mentioned on air, a woman whose life had been upended by a revelation on one of his shows. I cross-referenced her with the people who had been upset by Vincent's confessions, and there it was, a thread that tied her to the fallout from Melissa's ex-husband's revelation. And suddenly, the motive became clear. This wasn't random anger. This was revenge, meticulously planned. Once I had Vicky Caldwell's name, the puzzle didn't make sense. So, I dug into her history. Vicky had coincidentally met Evan months earlier. Friends said it was a meet cute, but looking closer, it wasn't chance. She had been watching him, learning his habits, noticing his loyalty to Vincent, and she used that. She played on his sense of duty, his desire to protect his friend, to keep him blind to her true intentions. The logs told the story. Every time Evan's credentials were used outside his schedule, V. Caldwell's name was a constant. Evan had no idea. To Vicky, he was the unwitting instrument of revenge. I traced Vicky's movements, phone records, credit card swipes, parking garage logs. She'd been careful, but not perfect. At 10:47 p.m., her car entered a garage 3 blocks from the station. She stayed off cameras, but the timestamp lined up with the 5-minute blackout in the security feed. From there, the picture built itself. She waited until Vincent was on air, mid-confession, his guard down. She used Evan's access to kill the cameras, slipped into the building and into the booth. Witnesses remembered the sound of a door creaking mid-broadcast, Vincent's words faltering for just a second before he forced his voice steady. That wasn't nerves. That was Vicky. And when his voice cut out, replaced by dead air, the city thought it was a technical glitch. But in that silence, Vicky Caldwell ended Vincent Hale's life. I had to break the news to Evan. He had been a pawn in this game. Evan opened the door, confusion in his eyes. But behind him, Vicky froze. She knew why I was there. The guilt came before the words ever could. I told them both the truth. Her name had surfaced in the logs, right in the dead air of the footage. The night Vincent died, she wasn't home. Vicky didn't bother to deny it. She wore the truth like armor. I could see it in the way her jaw set, in the way her eyes refused to blink. And calmly, she explained that she had lost everything. Her marriage, her money, her reputation. And Vincent had lit the match. When he aired Melissa's call, Vicky's world caved in. She wasn't the wronged wife anymore. She was the fool. And when her husband walked out, chasing his fresh start, she was left with rage so sharp it cut her in half. But she found a way to stitch herself back together. Evan. She slipped into his life, smiled at the right moments, said yes to the ring, but not out of love, out of calculation. Every kiss, every touch was a mask. Evan was her key to the station, the place she'd been locked out of until she needed it most. The night Vincent died, the blackout wasn't a glitch. It was her window. She knew Evan's access, knew how to step through the gap. 5 minutes of silence, enough to turn fury into murder. She confessed it all without ever speaking it directly. Her silence was sharper than any scream. Her eyes said it for her. Yes, I killed him, and I'd do it again. I looked at Evan. His face was a ruin. He had been nothing more than her cover story, her camouflage. The room collapsed into silence after that. Evan's breath came in broken stammers, like a man trying to wake from a nightmare he couldn't shake. Vicky didn't move. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just sat there, spine straight, like a queen at her own execution. She had played her part, and in her mind, she had already won. The sirens cut through the quiet, growing louder until blue and red lights bled across the walls of their living room. When the knock came, Vicky didn't resist. She stood, offered her wrists, and walked out like she'd been waiting for this ending all along. Evan crumpled into the nearest chair, his face buried in his hands. I didn't tell him the truth he already knew, that his marriage had never been real, that his home had been nothing more than a staging ground for revenge. For me, the case was closed, but the echoes of it would stay long after the sirens faded. Vincent's voice, sharp, taunting, unforgettable, had been silenced. Yet his show had done its work. It had pulled secrets from the dark, and one of those secrets had come back, armed and merciless. And in the end, it was the confessions he welcomed on air that killed him. After 6 months, I could close this case out and say yet again, checkmate. If you're still here, you're one of the curious ones. Stick around. The next mystery's already waiting.